thank you all for having me today. As it says, my name is Andrew Pryor-Miller. I go by Drew. I'm going to tell a little bit about my story and how I ended up as a quality assurance engineer at Snapchat, and then more about what quality assurance actually is. So what do I actually do? Quality assurance engineering lead at Snapchat for the broadcast team. What that means is, how many of you all have used Snapchat before? Great, that's what I like to hear. Thanks for keeping me employed. So the broadcast team, we are responsible for the stories page and the discover page inside of the app and everything associated with that. So we have this entire back-end infrastructure that's responsible for, keeping track of your stories and your views and screenshots and all of that stuff, as well as the discover articles, so like your Cosmopolitans and your Brothers and Daily Mails. And then we also, in addition to that, have a content management system, which allows publishers like the Cosmos and the ESPNs to actually go in and create those new editions for you every day or update them multiple times a day, whatever it is that they feel is best for their own brand. I've been here at Snapchat now for over 2 years. I started off as straight QA, and in that 2-year time period, the company's grown something like 5x, and so had the opportunity to take on more and more challenges and really learn what it's like to be at a startup as we grow into more of a developed company. So how did I get here? I was born and raised right here in Los Angeles, not necessarily Pasadena, but born and raised in some of the roughest neighborhoods here in LA. So I grew up in South Central Los Angeles and Compton. I lived in Inglewood for a while. I actually still live in South Central right now. I went to high school in Carson at the California Academy of Mathematics and Science, which was a public school, but a public selective school, focused mainly on math and science. And so there, as it said, I got a whole lot of exposure to various types of math, all the way up to calculus. We got to take college classes since the school is located on a college campus at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And throughout those experiences, really prepped me for engineering at the college level. I went to university at UCLA over in Westwood, where I studied computer science and engineering. Going into college, I had no real idea what computer science was. I knew I liked the idea of engineering, and I knew that I liked computers. I didn't know that computer science was the same thing as computer programming. I took computer programming in high school and absolutely hated it and said, this is something I will never, ever do again in my life. Lo and behold, that first day of class, I was like, what did I get myself into? But I also learned that it's really about kind of the professor and the network that you're around to support you through the computer science process. And so, as I said earlier, I was blessed enough to have my very first internship pretty early. I was part of an experimental program at HP, Hewlett-Packard, that first year. We're actually at my first summer internship the summer between high school graduation and freshman year of college. So 3 days after I graduated from high school, I flew up to Sacramento to start this internship with Hewlett-Packard. I had never really left home before, didn't know what it was like to find your own apartment, all that kind of stuff, and was really just thrown into the world. And so seeing the opportunities there, that first summer internship, the kind of things that I'd be able to work on if I was an engineer, the financial gains I'd be able to experience if I stuck with engineering, really gave me that drive to succeed that first year, my freshman year of college, and really kind of hit the ground running. Like I said, computer science and engineering at UCLA is kind of a split major, so half EE, half computer science. So getting exposed to a lot of programming, but also a lot of circuit design, computer chip architecture, all that kind of stuff. Things that I thought was really, really exciting. I thought that I was going to be building computers and I'd be able to make my own radio when I graduated from college. That's not really the case either. I still couldn't do that stuff, but I learned a lot about what I liked as well as what I didn't like and want to do with my career. As I said, my first internship, I worked as an electrical engineer designing wiring harnesses for a printer. My second one, I worked as a mechanical engineer testing the force required to break nozzles during assembly to make sure that the materials we were using would basically hold up during the assembly process of these printers that were set to go out at the end of the year. My third internship was my very first foray into actual software engineering work, where I designed a parts tracking system for printers during the assembly process, so that the people that were interested could basically track in real time how many parts were leaving the facility, where they were in certain stages, and all the rest. I had to learn Java on the fly as well as some other supported libraries to get the job done. Really, really challenging internship, but it also showed that I could do this programming thing. So it's a very different experience to code in school and do class projects versus when you're working and everything's really open-ended and you're solving problems that people don't actually know the answer to yet. And so that was a really good experience. Those 3 internships allowed me to then basically meet the bar for one of the biggest companies in the world, which was Microsoft. So I interviewed right after that summer internship and ended up getting another internship at Microsoft, in which I worked on, how many of you guys have heard of Vista? Remember that disaster back in the day? Maybe. No. Yeah. So I worked on Windows Vista and was working as a software development engineer in test at Microsoft there. And that was my first foray into doing computer automation. So creating programs that would automatically install Windows and then verify certain aspects of Windows and then provide the results in an interesting and palatable fashion. Found out I didn't really like working on that team and I wanted to do something that was a lot more visible. I think a lot of people want to see, be able to talk to their parents or their friends about what it is that they're working on. So I ended up interviewing again at Microsoft, but for the Office team. And so I did my second internship at Microsoft working on Microsoft Office Word. You guys heard of that one? Yeah, so during that internship I was doing more automation, and I actually worked on a tool that would automatically analyze all of the libraries native to Word. Do you guys understand when I say libraries? Have you guys got to that part yet of coding? Okay. Let's say various modules. It would automatically analyze that and then create test cases based on what it found in those modules. So this tool I wrote over that summer basically saved a few hundred hours of actual engineering time to basically give you a surface or really, really simple smoke test of how good the libraries were. That was good enough to also get me a full-time job offer at Microsoft. And so I went back to Microsoft. I think I have another slide about that stuff. Oh yeah, here we go. So I went back to Microsoft for a full-time career there on the Word team, working on Microsoft Office Word, but more specifically this online version of Word, Microsoft Word Online, as well as the back-end system that supported that. And so I learned a lot there about working with enterprise and how to actually build services that run in enterprise or run in the cloud, and then testing around that as well. After about 2.5, 3 years of that, I decided I was tired of programming and wanted to try something completely different. I wanted to work on my soft skills more, which I felt came a lot more naturally to me, and I wouldn't have to work as hard to be successful at those soft skills. So I made a complete career change over to being a university recruiter. So it's not something that's really common and would get a whole lot of looks, mainly because the engineering field, it's very challenging. You have to think one way, recruiting, totally separate. Also very, very, very different pay scales. And so I had to get comfortable making a lot less money than I was making as an engineer. But I was a recruiter for about 3.5 years, recruiting at universities all around this country, Canada, recruited in India a bit. And as I said, really, really was able to work on my soft skills, so presentation skills, interviewing skills, a lot of things that I would not have had the opportunity to do as quickly had I stayed in engineering. After a few years as a recruiter at Microsoft, we got a brand new CEO and did this whole restructure thing. And in the very last rounds of layoffs during that restructure, I got laid off from Microsoft, which was like a huge shock. Big setback. Microsoft had been my dream company, something I'd been looking forward to since I was about 13 years old. And it was time to figure out what I was going to do now. I thought I was going to be a lifer at Microsoft, which meant working there until I retired, which to many of you guys probably sounds crazy. Who wants to work at the same place for 30 years? But that was my original goal. The other disadvantage that I had was that because I was a recruiter for so long, I didn't have tech at the top of my resume anymore. So I had to figure out a way to get back into the tech space and basically, make me more interesting to other companies that I might, want to work at. So I started, coding some more, getting my skills back up to snuff, and really throwing my resume out to any company that would have me. I interviewed at this company called Redfin. Have you guys heard of that? Internet real estate company. Totally bombed it. It's really, really hard to do a tech interview if you haven't done one yourself in 4 years. Interviewed at Google. Did okay, but didn't get the offer. And yeah, we can do it. Bomb as in failed. Completely failed. They asked me some very basic questions that you all will be able to solve within 5 minutes, and I just completely failed it. It was horrible. Yes. Interviewed at Google, didn't get the job, and it was a huge, huge setback to my personal mental state, feeling like a failure after accomplishing so many things. But then I applied at another startup in Seattle called Skykick, and I found this position with them that was more of a mix of technical and soft skills. So I worked as a technical account manager for this company, Skykick, and what that allowed me to do, or what that meant, was that I was doing presentations most of the day. I was helping their customers troubleshoot what was going wrong with their installations, and then a small amount of sales as well. Even though to do that role I took another huge pay cut, it allowed me to get tech back on my resume and be able to speak about different things, as well as just getting my chops back up to speed. From there, one of my friends that I was at Microsoft with ended up leaving Microsoft shortly after me to come down to Snapchat. I received a phone call that said, hey, I'm here. I think this is going to be the opportunity that sets us up for life. I know you don't really want to program anymore, but I think you should come hear us out. This whole time I was in Washington. I had never wanted to come back to California, but I was like, hey, I understand how this recruiting thing works. I'll come down, I'll interview, I'll get an offer so that you look good, and then I'll come back. There's no way I'm coming to work for Snapchat. You guys don't even make money. And I flew down to interview. I met with the team, and after every interview that I had throughout the day there, it sounded more and more intriguing. They were still trying to figure out some things that I had already been working on at Microsoft. They were trying to get processes in place to really allow them to grow as a company, to increase their quality efforts. It seemed like a really interesting challenge that I'd be able to help them out with. And ended up receiving the offer. It was way better than I ever imagined it would be. Good enough to make me want to leave Washington and come back to glorious California with all of our traffic. And so that's how I ended up at Snapchat for the last 2 years. Sorry about that. It's my wake-up alarm. Cool. So quality assurance. What exactly is quality assurance, right? Yes. Well, I mean, I was going to give the answer, but if you want to tell me, go for it.
Where you test the product to make sure it is stable and does not break under previous situations.
Great. So yeah, you test the product to make sure that it's stable and doesn't break. There's three traditional main software roles that you'll see as you're pursuing potentially a career in the software industry. The first being a program/product manager or designer. Those are the people traditionally that will design your actual product. So they'll come up with the stories, as they say, or what your features or your products should actually look like. Basically building something that the customers will actually want. I like to, if we were looking at a real-world example, they're kind of like the architects for buildings. We have our software developers, which, as you guys know, are coders or programmers. The real-world example being our actual construction workers. So they take these designs or these schematics, blueprints from the architects, and actually figure out how to turn that paper drawing into reality. Our software developers, I listed these two titles, software developer and test, which is what I was at Microsoft, and then quality assurance. Those are the ones that are going to come in and they're going to do everything that they can to blow up this building that your developers just built. They're going to try everything that they possibly can, from kicking in the door to breaking the windows, to make sure that it's the perfect house. As I said, first line of defense for the customer and for the product itself. So what does that actually mean, being the first line of defense for your customer? So you want to make sure that the product is as safe for your customers and as efficient and wonderful and all of those great words as they can be, because if your customers are happy, you stay employed, your company grows, all of that stuff. And first line of defense for the product, because you also want to keep out all of the bad people. All the people that also want to break in and blow up your house or burn it down, whatever it is. So you try to think of all of these ways that your customer could use the product in good ways and in bad ways, and figure those out as early as possible so that your developers can fix those issues, or so that your designers or product managers can actually design around those things and change the blueprints if need be. My day-to-day as a quality assurance engineer, there's a lot of test planning. What does test planning actually mean? That means that I look at the specifications that are created by our designers, and pretty early on in the process start to look for ways that this thing is going to fall apart, or things that the designer did not consider. Potential roadblocks for either my developers or for the customers. I do a lot of scheduling, so figuring out whether or not we'd actually be able to ship this product in this amount of time based upon our developer time and our available resources, as well as the amount of testing that we would need to do to make sure that this product is actually as stable as it should be before it hits the market. Customer support liaison. So we, in most major companies, will have a customer support team that deals with all of your customers that are happy as well as unhappy with your product. So our team, they look at Twitter to see what people are complaining about or what they're excited about. We also have a support website that people can reach out to tell us about issues, as well as a beta group where they can actually shake to report from their device to let us know when they're experiencing problems. I work with them to get more details from users, to try to get better reproducible steps of things that users are experiencing, and then escalating that as necessary depending on what it is that my users are experiencing. A big part and an increasingly large part of my job is actually automation. So as I said, writing computer programs that will test our computer programs, right? So throughout many companies, how you actually do this automation will change. There's a lot of different platforms that you can use, but it's becoming increasingly more important in the QA field to be able to automate the testing of your software. And lastly, but not leastly, probably the most important, is triaging of issues. How many of you have heard of triaging before? Great. Hopefully, after this, you'll know what it is. Usually when people hear of triaging, it's more in a hospital setting. As young folks, you guys don't really know about that yet, hopefully. But it's basically determining how bad something is and then prioritizing what should have the highest priority, what needs to be addressed first to save the most people, or in the software world, it's figuring out which ones we need to fix the soonest, so that we have the most customer growth, or that our users are the most happy, or that we lose the least amount of money, all of that. And so it's on me, and a big part of my role, to figure out what that all is. And I can go into more detail if you guys have questions about that after this. So the future of quality insurance, as I said, it's increasingly moving towards automation. So what that means is there's going to be a lot less just manual testing. A lot of people assume that when they hear the word quality assurance, all those people are doing is banging keys or touching buttons. There's actually a lot more to it, as I said on that last slide. But as software is getting better and we're getting more and more machine learning, a lot of that manual stuff is going to be going out of the window. Because you'll be able to create software that will be able to, as I said, analyze your code and figure out what things they should be tested a lot faster than any regular human could do. So if you're interested in this QA field, the more experience you can get doing programming, the better, because that's essentially what we'll be doing. It's important to have this mindset of not only developing software, but wanting to figure out how to break software and interesting ways to break software. Does that make sense? Cool. This is the longest I've gone with people not talking.
Whenever you're ready, we can switch to Q&A if you want a little bit.
Okay, I think I have one more slide.
One more slide. Okay, cool.
Oh no, that's my last slide. I guess I did not say thank you on my slides. But thank you all so much for having me. And any questions, I am here to answer.
Yeah, we're going to give you a round of applause first.
Thanks.
And we're going to not let you go yet. We have about 5 minutes where we can take some questions. And it's a mixed audience here. We have some high school students. We have some senior professors. We have graduate students, postdocs. One thing that I'm just going to kick things off with was I was intrigued by how many internships you had. And I took an internship after having my PhD. So as well, if you're interested in a new field, whether you're a PhD, a postdoc, I don't know if professors can get internships, but getting your foot in the door is always a great thing. So do we have more questions for Andrew back here? I don't think the mic is okay. The mic is a good idea for both the recording and also for people who might have hearing difficulties. So.
Thank you for sharing your story. That was super cool. So I'm a little curious about one thing. It seems like as a quality assurance engineer on the broadcast team, to some extent, your job is to engineer and ensure that Snapchat makes money and make sure that doesn't go wrong. No, it's important. So what I'm interested in is that now that Snap has that infamous 5-word vision, just Snap as a camera company, how do you see your role changing, and how do you see yourself continuing to engineer and ensure that Snap makes money as they become less of the traditional phone app and more of a camera company? Great. To make sure I understand that, how do I ensure that with our newly stated goal of being, product vision of being a camera company or camera company first, how do I ensure that we continue to grow and make money? Right? Cool. So yes, we are a camera-focused company, and my role hasn't changed in the 2 years that I've been here. That's been our internal vision since I started. And everything that we're doing, we're trying to think of new and creative ways for you to utilize that camera and keep you engaged, right? So when you look at what we did yesterday with allowing you to create these new 3-dimensional backgrounds or our voice modification filters all centered around the camera. So capturing those memories and then interesting ways of sharing those with the other people that you care about as well.
That's what you see with Maps and Search. How many of you guys have seen our Maps product? Cool. So yeah, as I said, very interesting ways of sharing your own memories with other people that you know or might not know as well yet. And everything that we're doing is kind of focused around that. So yeah, my portion of that is making sure that you can share that with as many people at one time as possible.
Other questions?
And then I wanted to say one more thing before I walk away,
and
then I'll get to, not before I walk away, before I get to more questions, because I actually accidentally deleted one of my slides. One of the things that I thought was most important throughout my career so far is being deliberate in my actions. So what does that actually mean? That means not just looking at the current step that I'm at, but looking at what this step is going to allow me to do in the future. So is it okay to take a pay cut now if it's going to set me up for the skills that I think are important later on in life? For most of you guys, looking at high school and going to college, or currently in college right now, that means, am I pursuing the right career or the right focus, the right major that's going to allow me to live the life that I want, or allow me to kind of get the income needed to further pursue the things that I'm really passionate about to later get the life that I want. Instant gratification is great, but it's not always possible for everyone. So just, being deliberate about what you're doing and really thinking about what that next step might be after your current action.
I'm going to ask one of our summer app space students, give Mike priority there.
How did you come to want to do coding since you didn't like it at first, and was it a long period of time before you started to want to do it?
Yeah, how did I start to want to do coding or like coding? It was great. It falls right into being deliberate. So I knew that I didn't absolutely love coding, but I knew that if I pursued this career in software, that I was going to open up other doors to do the things that I was passionate about. So like one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is real estate investing on the side. So software engineering, coding, allows me the funds to pursue that outside of work and give back to my community with this extra money that I can generate and all the rest of that. So programming isn't the thing that I love, but I love what it enables me to achieve.
Maybe two more questions. So over here in the middle.
All right, so this is like a two-part question, but at what point did employees realize that the IPO was coming, and what was the atmosphere of that like?
Great. At what point did the employees know that the IPO was coming, and what was the atmosphere like?
For our high school students, say what an IPO is.
Yep. So IPO is initial public offering. So that's basically when a company moves from being privately held to a publicly traded company with shares in the stock market. Depending on the team you're on, you knew at different times in the company. But for the most part, there's all these legal restrictions around what the company could actually tell you. So if you were intuitive, you would know that some of the trainings we were having and some of the increased security we were having meant that we were getting pretty close to the IPO. But they couldn't explicitly tell us until a few days or a few weeks before, something like that. Or maybe they didn't tell us. I don't know. But I was in the know because I think I'm pretty intuitive. And in terms of what the climate was like inside, everyone was super duper excited. It meant that this thing that we were all hoping would be successful was probably going to make a lot of people a lot of money pretty soon. And so it was pretty great. But the day we IPO'd, I think that sales and HR and finance celebrated a ton. Engineering kept it business as usual because we were still shipping product. So I'm hoping that we have a much bigger party in a couple months, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, one last question. I'm sorry, he had his hand up before.
Thank you very much. One of the big changes we've seen over the last 10 years is just how much we use our smartphones. And there's kind of an irony in that it allows me to connect with my friends thousands of miles away, but at the same time, if I go to dinner with my friends, a lot of them are just on their smartphone the whole time and they're actually engaging in the conversation. Do you ever worry that companies like Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter have in fact made the smartphone too addictive and make a product that is in fact too compelling and in some way takes away from our day-to-day interactions with people face to face? Thank you.
Do I worry that companies like Snapchat have made basically cell phones or technology too compelling, and basically I think like it negatively impacts real social interaction? I think yes, that could be a thing, but I think it's more so about the culture that you create around yourself versus companies. So I personally believe in as much free choice as possible. I think that you should have as many things out there for people to utilize and appreciate as they want, but it's up to us all as individuals to decide what we want that culture to be, right? So amongst me and my friends, we definitely, whenever we go out, we have like when it's sit-down dinners and movies, it's a strict no phones policy so that we can focus on each other. And I would hope that as time goes forward or as people mature a little bit more, they'll also kind of enforce those things with their friends as well so that you don't miss out on those great personal interactions.
So let's thank Andrew again. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
I just wanted to say that I think those soft skills paid off in terms of being able to give a presentation that's valid to high school students, to college students, parents, professors. You know, you did a great job. So thanks so much for sharing with us
so much for having me.
your job. And